The dense jungle of Guadalcanal on August 19, 1942, was the setting for a massive psychological and tactical shock to the Imperial Japanese Army. Second Lieutenant Genjiro Imi of the 8th Independent Anti-Tank Gun Company recorded the astonishment that many Japanese soldiers felt upon meeting American forces for the first time. Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki's detachment, over 900 strong, had just landed in a nighttime insertion, believing they were the first step toward retaking Henderson Field. They had been told the Americans were poorly trained, soft from a life of luxury, and easily frightened. Ichiki himself dismissed warnings, proclaiming, "These are Americans. We will sweep them into the sea before sunrise." What these battle-hardened veterans of China and Southeast Asia were about to face was a systematic demolition of every tactical assumption and ideological certainty of the Japanese way of war. The campaign began on August 7th when 11,000 United States Marines of the 1st Marine Division stormed ashore in Operation Watchtower, the first American offensive in the Pacific. Their immediate objective was to seize the nearly completed Japanese airfield, which they renamed Henderson Field. The island itself was a tropical nightmare, 90 miles long, a hell of suffocating heat, 90% humidity, and clouds of mosquitoes. Malaria, dengue fever, dysentery, and tropical ulcers would ultimately disable more men than enemy action. Though the Marines initially found the airfield almost undefended, a catastrophic naval defeat on the night of August 9th, the Battle of Savo Island, forced the surviving Allied naval forces to withdraw, leaving the Marines stranded, cut off, and with barely half their supplies. Despite this, control of Henderson Field meant control of the surrounding seas during daylight, making the airfield the key to the entire campaign. The strategic situation demanded that Japan retake the airfield immediately, and Colonel Ichiki, known for his impulsiveness and supreme confidence in Japanese fighting spirit, disobeyed orders to wait for reinforcements. On the night of August 20th, he ordered a frontal assault directly across the sandbar at the mouth of what the Marines called the Tanaru River. Japanese doctrine emphasized aggressive night attacks and spiritual power over enemy firepower. However, the Marines were ready, having established prepared defensive positions. Hundreds of Japanese soldiers charged into a meticulously prepared killing zone. The American M1917 A. 1 Browning water-cooled machine guns capable of sustaining 600 rounds per minute tore through the attackers. Those who made it across the sandbar were met with 37mm anti-tank guns firing canister rounds, which essentially acted like giant shotgun shells. The Battle of the Tanaru was a disaster for the Japanese. Ichiki's attack stalled, and by midday on August 21st, approximately 800 of his 917 men were dead. Marine casualties were approximately 40 killed and wounded. The psychological impact on the Japanese survivors was devastating. They realized the Americans had not panicked under night attack. Instead, they had waited and systematically destroyed them with concentrated firepower. Most importantly, they recognized the American material superiority, which Japanese intelligence had completely failed to comprehend. The Browning machine guns were reliable, and the coordination between infantry, artillery, and naval gunfire represented an integrated system of destruction Japanese forces had never encountered. The Japanese next attempt, led by Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi, resulted in the Battle of Edson's Ridge, or Bloody Ridge, in September. Kawaguchi's assault was more sophisticated than Ichiki's frontal charge, attempting to envelop American positions by infiltrating through ravines. However, the Marines, led by Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Edson, were ready, having identified the ridge as the most likely avenue of approach and established defensive lines. They had prepared another killing ground on a narrow coral spine, utilizing interlocking machine gun fire and registered mortar and artillery fire. Over 2 nights of savage fighting, Kawaguchi's forces repeatedly attacked, only to be shattered by concentrated American firepower, including over 2,000 rounds fired by the 11th Marines Artillery Regiment. The final Japanese casualty count was staggering, with approximately 830 to 850 soldiers dead on and around the ridge. Guadalcanal quickly became an attritional war where logistics and technology were decisive. The Japanese, relying on the Tokyo Express destroyer runs to ferry troops, could not transport heavy equipment, adequate food, or ammunition. Japanese soldiers were soon fighting not only American firepower but starvation itself. Medical supplies ran out, and by late October, a medical officer's report noted that over 60% of the Japanese 17th Army forces were incapacitated by disease or malnutrition. Soldiers were dying at a rate of 50 per day, most from starvation and disease. In stark contrast, American supply ships, protected by the Cactus Air Force, regularly delivered food, ammunition, and medical supplies. The final major Japanese offensive in late October, personally commanded by Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake, was a final desperate attempt to break through American lines. The main assault, involving approximately 5,600 troops, was again repelled by the devastating and coordinated fire of Marine and Army units, with more than 2,000 Japanese soldiers killed. By December 1942, Japanese command recognized that continuing the operation meant the complete destruction of the 17th Army. They evacuated 10,652 men in early February 1943 during Operation K. Of the 36,000 Japanese personnel who served on Guadalcanal, an estimated 25,000 to 30,000 died, with a majority succumbing to disease and starvation rather than combat wounds. The Japanese had expected their warrior spirit and tactical skill to triumph, but instead, they were defeated by America's systematic application of industrial power, overwhelming firepower, and meticulous logistics. Guadalcanal shattered the myth of Japanese invincibility and marked the definitive turning point where the Allies shifted from defense to offense in the Pacific War. The terror for Japanese soldiers was born not from fear of death, but from the realization that courage and sacrifice were meaningless against an enemy whose resources never ran out.